in-person and virtual events where we explore people and topics of interest to our wide audience of meetings and events professionals. We are so excited today to welcome Amanda Brinkman to our studio. Amanda is a producer, a filmmaker, branding expert. She's a sought-after public speaker, sharing her do well by doing good philosophy on stages all across the country. She demonstrates how both companies and individuals can make a meaningful and a positive difference in people's lives while fostering their own success in the process. And she believes that companies must not only identify their brand purpose, but put that purpose into action. So through her work, Amanda has defined what it looks like for brands to truly act as publishers, creating movements through their own content strategy. And in her most recent demonstration of this, Amanda was the Chief Brand Officer of Deluxe, where the brand challenge was to reach small businesses. So what was the solution? Well, she created, produced, and hosted their Emmy-nominated series, Small Business Revolution, which streamed on Hulu and was named among Inc. magazine's top shows for entrepreneurs. Today, we are going to hear more about Amanda's career, her passion for bringing goodness and business together, and her new talk, The Purpose Pursuit. So while we ask Amanda to join us here in the studio, let's take a look at a short trailer for the Small Business Revolution.
Small businesses across the country are fighting for their survival.
When manufacturing left the country, we were particularly hard hit.
The pandemic hit and our business barely stayed open.
In each business, there's a family behind that.
Walmart out on the edge of town, and you end up with a shell of a community.
It was a story all over the country.
Deluxe and the Small Business Revolution are joining the fight, revitalizing a country one small business at a time.
This is going to be life-changing.
Now it looks a little better for me and my family.
Deluxe started a spark in this community that I have never witnessed before. Never!
Join marketing maven Amanda Brinkman and her team at Deluxe as they work with a cast of celebrity experts to help each season's winning small businesses realize their full potential.
We do this because you are the heroes in this country.
And America chooses the winner.
Voting really brought the town together.
Thousands of small cities and towns taking part in it.
I know I voted.
And after 6 seasons and millions of votes cast, the revolution has never been stronger.
The winner is Wabash, Indiana.
Every episode, we're working with a new small business.
So it's a restaurant. The beauticians on this side have a barber chair.
A competitive boxing gym.
How are you feeling about business right now?
It is awful.
I have over $100,000 invested into it.
Do you feel like this area gets as much attention as other parts of town?
Not at all.
There's a bus coming, and that bus is going to run you over.
I want to be an international brand. I just don't know how I'm going to get there.
It's going to be a lot of work, but it's going to be worth it.
I gotta say, it already looks better.
This is awesome.
If we get through this, we're golden.
But success isn't just about one business. It's about the entire community.
You can get people to work together. You can actually make America a better place, starting one small business at a time.
Everybody pulling together and being a part of this building process.
It's definitely been one of the most monumental things that have ever happened in our life.
Any kind of change that's worth it, it's scary.
But we can be an example for the rest of the country of how effective change can happen.
Catch up on all of the seasons streaming on Hulu and smallbusinessrevolution.org.
So great. Amanda, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Oh my gosh, marketing maven. I love that title. I absolutely love it. And it's so fitting for you because of your career path is wonderful. I enjoyed doing my research here before welcoming you to the stage. You've been in marketing in a variety of roles for 25 years.
It's crazy when you say it that way.
Yeah.
That's a long time.
All of a sudden, 25 years
I know,
later,
it's like a flash.
Here we are. We're on TV. We're on TV series. We're keynote speaking. Tell us a little bit about that path.
Yeah, so I started out on the ad agency side, so what was Campbell Methuen, and then Fallon, and I had the opportunity to work on the BMW films, which was incredible. So it really kind of whet my appetite for, and really very early in my career, I just kind of expected that brands are capable of this long form entertainment that can move business, but it's something that people really want to watch. So I feel very blessed that I had the opportunity early in my career to learn that lesson and to work on a brand as iconic as BMW. Yeah. But I was always really curious about the corporate side, and so I ventured over to United Health Group, started their internal agency, so I was able to stay close to the creative product, but start to get a sense for how marketing teams are organized and how it works on the corporate side. Then I was at a company called Allianz in financial services, General Mills, and then for almost the last decade, I was at a company called Deluxe.
Yes, amazing. So, well, something that just popped into my thought process here while you were saying that is that, so these are big corporations that you have been able to work with. And I always like to point out the fact that just because the word corporate is attached to what we're talking about, it doesn't mean that these campaigns or the branding work that is done for them is stale, boring, lifeless, right? Corporate kind of has that sort of perception attached to it.
It sure does.
Not so.
No, I think that's what really, when you think about marketing, that breaks through, and that's the goal for every marketer is to how do you break through that noise or that clutter or that sea of sameness within your category. It's really about understanding, how your audience spends their time, what matters to them, how they make decisions. I'm a huge fan. We have so much data at our disposal as business leaders now. It's almost too much data, and we've become so quantitative in how we measure every little thing. And I'm a huge fan of getting back to the roots of that qualitative, almost that ethnographic research of spending time with your customer, especially like in the case of reaching small businesses. That is a very crowded landscape. There are so many different products and services that are trying to be marketed to small businesses. But the way we came up with the Small Business Revolution was by just spending time with them and really understanding how they make decisions about what they're going to buy and what services they need. And, I think when marketers are really thinking about how do you break through, it's about spending time with your audience and really, day-to-day understanding what moves them.
Yeah. So, let's talk a little bit more about Small Business Revolution. And I think a lot lot of us, we all know Deluxe. We know the history of the company.
You're too young to have ever written a check.
No. I have written a check. I will tell you that I don't. It's been a long time since I've had checks.
That's probably true.
But what a fascinating corporate story as Deluxe reinvented itself. But so at what point did the idea of Small Business Revolution come about? I'd love to have been a fly on the wall in those meetings. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, Deluxe is it's a 110-year-old company now. But when I was joining the organization, we were on the eve of our centennial. And we certainly were known, either you hadn't heard the name Deluxe because you bought your checks through your bank, or if you knew us just for checks. And so when this opportunity came to be, it was, how do you raise brand awareness with small businesses, which was an area that Deluxe had started to expand its products and services into. And as a brand marketer, I always love a good challenge. We had less than 1% brand awareness with small businesses. Wow. And so I did what we were just talking about. I went out and spent time with small businesses. We didn't have a huge branding budget, and we were also going to try and use that to talk about our centennial. So what could we do in our 100th year to talk about not our past and our legacy, but truly talk about our future, and how could we use that centennial, that milestone, to get in front of small businesses? And when I was out spending time with these entrepreneurs, I was just so moved by their stories. I mean, we all know an entrepreneur, a small business owner, where when you hear their personal story as to why they started their business, what's hard about running their business, you fall in love with the actual person behind that business, and you want to support them.
Yeah.
And you see that there's real power in your dollars, and that it's not just a purchase, but you are supporting a person and their dream and their family and the families of those who work for them and the community in which they reside. I mean, there's just it just gives you goosebumps. It's like it's a really impactful thing. So that's where the small business revolution came from. It was like, this is the way we can get in front of let's be their champions. Could we share their stories? And really, the vision from the very beginning was, let's not just create an ad campaign. Let's try and create a movement. Could we do something that shared these stories that could truly highlight the importance of supporting small businesses? And so in our 100th year, we went across the country and we shared the stories of 100 small businesses. And we shot those all in documentary style. And that cinematic quality was part of the message. We really wanted to show them as the heroes we believe they are in our country and in our economy and in our communities. And so we rolled those out throughout our 100th year, ended that year with a capstone longer form documentary that talked about the impact small businesses have. And it was a kind of a bit of a runaway success in terms of, we were redirecting what you would call working dollars or paid media to investing in the quality of filmmaking, all with the hopes that we could stretch our spend and reach more small businesses that way. And we not only reached more small businesses, we reached 14 times more people than we would have reached if we would have just done a traditional marketing or ad campaign. And I think it's because we led with authenticity and genuine approach. And then it evolved to what it was for 6 seasons, which was an unscripted show where each season we asked people to nominate their favorite small town, and then Deluxe would invest $500,000 in revitalizing the winning town's main street. And each episode was about an individual small business, and it was really about taking that storytelling a step further. So we were still sharing their story, but then we were helping them with the things that Deluxe actually did for small businesses. But it was in we played an authentic character in that story, because you can't help a small business without addressing their marketing and their finances. They're the two things that small businesses struggle with the most. So the series was very successful and meaningful, and it made a big difference to not only these businesses, but the communities and the entire team that had the honor of working on it.
How long does it take you to shoot a season?
Each year there would be a cycle. So we would ask people to nominate. Over the course of the 6 seasons, we had 30,000 towns nominated. And then we would narrow it down. It was a very hard process. And then we would narrow it down to the top 10. And then my team and I would actually put boots on the ground and go and visit these 10 communities, because we were still leading with that movement mentality. And so we really wanted not just the winning town that ended up being featured after all of the voting. We wanted, what if 10 communities could experience this kind of jolt of energy coming to town? And we'd host rallies and we'd go and visit all the small businesses, and it was just really great for these 10 communities every year to experience. Sometimes it takes someone from the outside to come in and say, you have something really special here, to remind you of what a special place your community is and how vital your small businesses are to it. And then we narrowed down to the top 5 from that process, and then the public would vote. And every year we'd get over 1 million votes cast, and people would be on. It was discussed on the floor of Congress. There was people would be on. Someone mentioned on the Tonight Show. I mean, it was crazy fun to see. And that's how we stretched our spend too. Was a lot of that organic reach. And people, taking to social media to get their communities to vote.
Yeah, amazing. What's it like to work with Ty Pennington?
Oh my gosh, it's so much fun. Who you see on TV is who he is. I mean, that is who Ty Pennington is.
I was hoping that you would say that.
He's just, he's got an incredible heart. He really cared about this work. He didn't just show up to film. He and I would bartend at the local pub. He would, make connections with the small businesses himself. I mean, he was just, I felt so blessed that every co-host I had really cared about the work in a way that was meaningful and we wouldn't have selected those co-hosts had they not. Everyone who touched this project from across the process had to kind of have that mission and movement, in their core, and it was great to see that.
Yeah, wow, good. I'm so glad. Sometimes there are these personas,
that is true.
And
that is true.
It's wonderful to know that what you see is what you get.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Small Business Revolution and everything that you just shared there is true demonstration of the do well by doing good. True, right?
Yes, thank you for
100%.
noticing. Yeah, I went through my entire career kind of trying to prove that, and that was the opportunity I really saw with Deluxe. Like, oh, this is going to be the opportunity to truly prove that this is possible. Because doing well for Deluxe would be raising our brand awareness and reaching more small businesses. But on our way to achieving those business results, what could we do that would be good for small businesses? And the number one thing they need is people to support them. You got to put your money where your mouth is and actually buy from them. And so again, by redirecting our marketing dollars to being about small businesses first and Deluxe second, we felt like we were doing good for these small businesses. It was about each of them individually, but it was more about, again, this movement and really using our platform to raise the awareness of how important it is to support small businesses.
Yeah. So you speak on this topic as well. Was there a moment in your corporate work history or in your life where this mantra spoke to you, that you were like,
that's a good
this
question.
is it?
Yeah. I mean, it was before I even got into my career. So I remember, I was raised, in a home that was all about, giving back and serving the community. And I loved that. And I always wanted to go into something that was good. And I'm going to use those, what we would define as good. And, there are only so many careers or industries that kind of read that way, just as, what they are. But I was also so attracted to our world, like the production and media and advertising and design and film. But advertising and marketing kind of can read a little, I don't know. I was conflicted, that it didn't read as good right away.
Yeah.
And so, I think it was like my senior year of high school, and we were having the discussion of what are you doing after high school, and what are you going to study if you decide to go to college? And I kind of shared this conflict that I was having with one of my teachers, and he said, I want to go into something that's good, but I'm also so attracted to, business and marketing and film. And he said,
what an interesting statement there, because he was feeling that there was a disconnect there.
Absolutely. And without missing a beat, he said, but Amanda, if people who want to do good in the world don't go into those industries, how will the business world ever get better? And I've seen him since, and he doesn't remember saying that, but it changed my whole perspective. I think that's what they call a paradigm shift. The same, I looked at it completely differently. It not only gave me permission to pursue something that I was really interested in, but it gave me this mission behind it, a purpose. Like, I want to prove that companies can do well by doing good, that we don't need to think about it in such a binary way, that either you're a company that makes money or you're a nonprofit that does good in the world. How do you bring those two things together? And when you can, like, I do think the Small Business Revolution was a good case study in that, like, when you bring those two things together, I mean, magic happens.
Yeah. Oh, that's wonderful. Thank you for sharing that. So this goes way back. Like you said, this was before you even went to college. Where did you go to school?
I went to Winona State, down in Winona, Minnesota.
Okay. Yeah. Wonderful. Okay, so it's my understanding that you recently left corporate.
I did.
All right, so you're at Deluxe during a very pivotal time, pivotal change for them. Small Business Revolution is created. It's a huge success. And then you decide to make a change.
Yeah. Well, I loved the work we were doing. It was so rewarding. I mean, I feel so blessed to have been able to work on that and work with the people that brought it to life and the businesses that we got to touch. It was really meaningful work. But about halfway through my tenure there, I realized that I loved how this film work was proving this, this theory or this thesis that you could do well by doing good. And I just wanted to help more brands do that. But, the options were either I go to another company and spend another, 8-10 years there helping bring another program. Well, by the end of my career, I could maybe help 2 or 3 more brands. Or could I start my own film company and focus just on that kind of a solution and help other brands, help other CMOs be the hero, but also help other brands bring this kind of work to life, but all at the same time? Could there be more scale and reach that way? And so I started kind of dreaming it up. It took a few years for me to actually find the right time to leave. Again, that work was so meaningful, and it wasn't lost on me that if I left, the show would stop. And so when we decided to bring the Small Business Revolution home for season 6, it just felt like the right kind of finale, the right, bow, kind of go out on top. My mom used to always say, leave a party before it's over, before the lights come up and when you still want to stay.
So smart.
Yes. And so it was just kind of the perfect foray into starting my own film company. It's called Sunshine Studios.
Okay.
And we focus on long form branded entertainment that does well for the company. It has to have, be driving business results. The Venn diagram is, it has to be good for business. It's naturally engaging by the very format. Instead of creating the ad that interrupts what people want to be watching, let's create the show or the content or the documentary that people want to watch. And then the third overlapping circle that's really important to me is it has to be doing some sort of good in the world. It has to be standing for something. And that's such a great way for a brand to demonstrate what it truly cares about. And so I'm very proud that everything we're working on really meets all of that criteria.
Yeah. So we all know, we hear people talk about this all the time. Change is scary. Was it a scary move for you, or did you just know, like, nope, I'm ready to do this?
It was terrifying.
Oh.
It's interesting because it still is terrifying for the entrepreneurs out there. They can relate. You have this, I wasn't prepared for the roller coaster of, being an entrepreneur. Like one day you're like, here we go. All right, it's cooking. And then the next day you're like, what the heck did I do? Like, what did I do? And that, but that's kind of part of the ride. That's part of the fun, And so it was terrifying. And it was, I really struggled too with almost kind of the personal identity journey of it too. I mean, you have a lot of muscle at 25 years of working for someone else in these structures. You have a lot of muscle memory around how work is done and how you structure your time.
Yep.
And even if some of those things weren't feeding my soul anymore and I wanted to focus on something else, those still are daily habits that you have. And so it was I was thinking about it like either I made a good decision or I didn't. And someone said to me at one point, two things can be true at the same time. And now it sounds so simple, but I wasn't thinking of it that way either. And what a blessing that afterwards that I was sad that it was over. I mean, I think a lot of times when people leave jobs, they're like, bye, I'm out of here, like, see ya. And it's like, I didn't feel that way. I felt very sad that chapter was over for my team and I.
Yeah.
So what a blessing that I spent a decade doing something that felt meaningful in that way. But it's so exciting to, and by, a huge part of what I wanted to do is kind of create this portfolio career. The film company was really important to me, but I also wanted to be able to focus more on my speaking. And I was having to say no to a lot of engagements because we were traveling already so much for the show. And so just having agency over my own time has worked really well for me. I don't advocate that everyone leave their corporate executive role. That's not right for everyone. But for me, in this season of my life and career, this has been just an amazing, amazing move.
Yeah. As a professional in my mid-50s, I wholeheartedly believe in designing the life that you want to live.
Yes.
Right?
Yep.
And when it needs to include your, this whole work-life balance thing. Well, work is part of life, and you're not always going to have balance. But it sounds to me like you have been able to craft, you're doing all of the things that you love. And what a wonderful place that is to be in.
Yes. Thank you for saying that. And it's important for me to continue to hear that and remind myself. I kind of have this, I call it the sunshine season of my life. And I try to put everything through that filter. If I see something on my calendar and it gives me any sort of like, or anything but joy, then it's a hard no. Like I am trying, and there's still stuff that I'm having to weed out. And especially as an entrepreneur, you start to say yes too many times at the very beginning. But if it doesn't fit, if it doesn't bring me joy, then it's off. It's gone. And I think we forget that we have permission to do that.
Yes.
That we do have agency over how we spend our time. The older I get, the more I realize that the true measure of success is not how much money we make or what our title is. It is having choice, having the ability to choose how we spend our time. And that doesn't need to be in a life of luxury. I mean, I think when we think about the actual pursuit, the human need to feel happy and joy, money doesn't equal that. It is really just about how you're spending your days and your hours, this limited time that we have.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about that. How do you balance everything?
Certainly as an entrepreneur, I think the word balance goes out the window a bit more, even more so than I thought before, because it is, especially when you're running your own business, its success is solely on your shoulders. So how much you put into it is kind of what you yield in terms of results. But I've just really tried to think about my time as kind of this portfolio, this sliding, pie of like, there might be, I don't think I have what we would call balance if you were to look at a week, but it gets more like that if you look at it by the month and certainly by the quarter and definitely by the year. And so I think, especially as a mother, I think we sometimes think that being a good mom is a quantitative thing, like how many hours you're with your child. And the older our daughter gets, the more I realize it's really about the quality. And I'm a better mom when I am kicking ass at work. Oh, sorry.
Totally
Okay, sorry. Sorry. There's a few more coming, I'm sure. So, when you have those days where you are just, you are on, I mean, we all, you just have a different lift to your spirit, and you're a better parent, you're a better spouse, you're a partner in life, you're a better, you're better to yourself. And so,
and how wonderful for her to see that, right? She sees this amazingly strong, professional, woman kicking ass in business.
Yes, thank you for doubling down on the ass. That makes me feel so much more comfortable. You're a great host. Yes, okay, so when she was like, I think it was about maybe third grade, and I had been traveling for a few years for the show, and when we'd be filming, we'd be gone for about a week and a half at a time. And so of course, as a mom, I was really putting myself through this now I see it as unnecessary kind of guilt trip around being gone. And she did one of those classic Mother's Day questionnaires where it's like, what is my mom's favorite hobby? Wine, these types of things, right?
Yes.
Okay, these things where when they come home, you're like, oh boy. Okay, and underneath, what does your mom do? She didn't say she travels all the time or she's a corporate executive for a publicly traded company. She said, my mom helps communities. And it was like, oh my gosh, I changed my whole perspective on it. It's like that, to your point, that's what she's seen.
Yes.
And I'm so, what a blessing that was an exercise that they did and that is how she saw it. Because you're right, we are modeling for our daughters and our sons what it looks like to be, to just be a person who is pursuing what matters to them in every area of their life. And that motherhood is a very important part of my identity and my life, but it is not my whole self. And so I think it is important to think that way.
I have a son. My son is 22 now, and I know that as I went through those years where you were, had to be in the office at 7 o'clock in the morning and you were not getting home before dark and all of that, and I had other perhaps neighborhood moms saying things like, how does he deal with it when you're traveling? And it's like, you do not need to ask me that question because I hear a whole bunch of judgment in that, right? But that moment when, same thing, somebody said, what does your mom do? And he could actually articulate what I did, then I knew I was doing well by this boy is growing up to be a man who has tremendous respect for women.
You are 100%
in
right.
the workplace. So moms out there, keep doing your thing.
You're doing it. And then and we just have to be kinder to each other. Like we teach our children this, but as adults we sometimes have to remember, like, the bullying comes from a place of hurt from the other person. I think we did always think about it like I think when stay-at-home moms were asking working moms that, there's like a spirit, there's this underlying nudge in their head where they're like, should have I done that? And so by kind of acting like it's not the way to go, it kind of maybe made them feel better about the insecurity of whether they should have done it or not. And I think the same thing, I think as working moms, when we question, stay-at-home moms, I think we're doing the same thing. We're maybe there's something in us that's curious if we should have done that. And so I think we just have to honor each other's, we're all just doing our best in this world to create, great little humans and to move through it in a way that feels meaningful to us.
Yes, well put. So give me your best piece of advice for others in business, other entrepreneurs, perhaps. Best piece of advice.
Let's see. I think I'll stay on this theme of controlling your own time. Like I think my best piece of advice is to think about your time as finite and valuable as a resource as we think of our dollars. It's especially important for entrepreneurs, like especially when they're growing their business. It's very tempting to wear all the hats because to put out money to ask someone else to do something that you could figure out yourself feels like a luxury or extravagant. But when you're really trying to grow a business, you have to think through how are you best suited to move this business forward and make sure you're only spending time on that and find other people who can do the other things better and faster so you can grow. But I think it's true of people who work for other people too. You know, how do we look at our days and do the exercise I've been doing? Like, we don't love every part of our job. It doesn't, but you don't have to leave your job either to like it more. Like, are there pieces that you could move, or you could have a discussion with your manager about having another department take it over? Or, I mean, how do you kind of continue to make sure you're only spending time on things that you feel good at? Because I think that's another human need. Like, we are meant to feel good at what we do.
Yes.
I think it's like I just think somehow along the way we started to think that service or work was supposed to feel hard. And I just don't think as humans we're designed for it to be hard. What you're good at is different than what I'm good at. And that's on purpose. If we were all good at the same thing, nothing would get done. And so how do you make sure you are spending time on those days where you feel like you're coming home kicking ass? Make more days like that.
Yes.
And less days when it feels like it's just draining your soul.
We need to create a different word for work. Because it's just that word itself. Like, I'm going to work today. Well, we need to figure out how to position that differently. So
Absolutely.
that we do enjoy it.
Yeah. I always want to feel like I like what I am doing for a living. Maybe that.
Yes.
But that I'm doing it for more than just providing for my living. Like, I want to be thinking that I'm doing it because that is what I am here to serve the world with. And I think sometimes because someone is paying us to do it and the company is making money on it, we don't see that as a calling. We only see volunteering or things that, again, read as good as doing that. But everything in this whole, everything matters to move things forward. You could work for a window company, and there is meaning in what you do because you are creating a safe environment in a home. What could be more valuable than a person's home? That is purposeful. We don't all have to be curing cancer or alleviating homelessness. Like, there is purpose in every kind of company, every product, every service, and every role in what makes those things actually possible.
Yes. That's why it's so important for companies to define what their why is.
Yes.
For that window installer, it's not just to install windows, but it is, as you said, creating this home for people to live in. I think the most successful companies out there and leaders out there are people who identify in individuals special skills that they have, or like you just said, things that they're really, really good at, and then give them an opportunity to have that show up in their job. I've heard you speak on this topic, and you call them superpowers. I love that. Where did that come from?
Well, I think, to your point, it just made it sound more fun.
Yeah.
And it's true. I mean, I think a lot of times when I'll say to someone, like, use your superpowers, they're like, I don't have any. And it's like, yes, you do. They're the things you don't realize are superpowers. Like, can you hear about a project and instead of freaking out, figure out, okay, here's the big picture. Here's how we're going to break it into 15 steps. Here's who's going to do what. That's a superpower. And the fact that you don't realize that is because it comes naturally to you. I think the way to like pinpoint what is your superpower is to kind of think through when you find yourself a little like just kind of confused, like, how did that person not think of that? Or how is that not how they manage their time? Or how is that not how they approach it? It's because it's so natural to you. It's because it's your superpower. And so when you see someone else not doing something, that sometimes can be your clue. The other superpower can be, paying attention to the days that really energize you. Not stopping at like, well, today I worked on this project. It's like, no, what did you actually do on the project? Was it about convincing someone, or you kind of bringing someone else along around the mission and helping them see the vision in it? Or was it the actual productivity of it? Was it the strategy of it? Like, be really, really granular about what you actually did that made you maybe have that energy. Was it connecting to people? And so I just think it's important. We all have these superpowers. And again, the more we're using them, the better we feel about our work. And a lot of this leads into, you know, kind of this purpose pursuit stuff. But I think it's about just really understanding what you're naturally designed to be good at.
Yeah. And I think it's great managers and great leaders are the ones who can see those superpowers in people and then give them an opportunity to let that shine. So throughout your career, you've held very senior roles. You've been a leader. What have you learned about leadership, and what advice do you have for other leaders?
Well, I'm going to steal what you just said. I think, is that fair? Let's reiterate it.
Honored.
Yeah. Well,
Please do.
That's number one thing is like stopping and thinking about like we use all this terminology in corporate that is not human. Like you are leading a group of human beings who have whole lives outside of the work that they're doing. And the more you stop and realize what motivates each person individually, what energizes them. You know, I'm a words of affirmation person. Like when you think, if people know about the love languages, I'm off the charts. And so it's my natural inclination is to just thank people and compliment them and you know, just words. But I've had people work for me that doesn't move the needle for them. They need to, the way they see praise is a new opportunity or expanded role, or some people it's fiscal. For some people it's recognition more publicly. Like it's really understanding what helps people feel recognized. To your point, what makes people feel like they can focus more on what they're good at. And I've had those discussions with people on my team, like, okay, these 3 things are just like, you're clicking, but these 2 things are dragging you down. But these 2 things so-and-so loves. So let's just, you know, taking the time as a leader, I think I'd summarize it as taking the time as a leader to truly understand the people who work for you. And if you have a large organization, it's hard to trickle that all the way down. But if you're doing that for your immediate direct reports and then insisting they do it for theirs, it'll go all the way through your organization.
Yeah. That's why it's so important to have the right managers in place. To your point, if you don't have access to everyone in your company, then having the right managers in place to be able to do that.
Yes, and thinking about as you're promoting people and moving them throughout the organization, I think we think about this hierarchical nature of business a little sideways. Like being a good leader in and of itself is a superpower and a skill set. Just because you are good at a thing, let's say it's use the creative field, just because you're good at copywriting or art direction, why does that mean that you'd suddenly go into a role where now you're managing a team to do that? That is a different skill set to lead people, to motivate, all the things we're talking about. And so I think we kind of need to think differently about how we structure our organizations. How do you continue to move someone, you know, quote unquote, up in terms of, you know, people want to see their compensation increase year over year. But does that mean they have to then have an infrastructure below them or manage it? Aren't we actually like, they're getting further and further away from the thing that they're naturally good at. We're losing more and more of their talent on it because they're spending less time on it. Just because we define success as a hierarchy, you know, so I think there's an opportunity for leaders to start to question that, you know, maybe this, we use the term individual contributor when we do identify it this way. But I think I don't know, specialist, expert, I think there's terms we could put to it that honors the fact that this person's so good at it, they don't need to have them managing other people doing it would just be a misuse of their talent.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Not everybody needs or wants to be a manager of people, and they still want to be able to elevate in their career. But you're right. I've seen people move into management roles because of seniority, and they get away from doing the work that they're really good at, and that's their passion. So that whole thing needs to be reworked.
It might be why we see so much kind of unhappiness around middle management, because you're not quite all the way to maybe the higher echelons of your company. So you're seeing all the fruits of your labor by this definition, but you're too far away from the thing that you did, and you just kind of feel like you're not great at anything.
Yes.
And what a... Yeah. So don't do that.
At a point in your career where you should be doing the very best work of your life.
Yes.
Okay. So I've also heard you talk about career constellations. I love these little these little jewels
Oh.
within your vernacular. So tell us about career constellations.
Well, it's one of my, people talk a lot about gratitude practices, and, people have their different rituals around that. Maybe they write 5 things down, or they think about it on a morning walk, or whatever it happens to be. One of my gratitude rituals is to, every time I'm going to a coffee or an appointment, or I'm feeling like a ting of just like, wow, that was magic how that happened, I try to trace all the way back to kind of how I got to that moment. I think when we're going through our life, every conversation we're having, every person we meet, everything we said yes to, all of these different things are like these little stars like illuminating in our past. And it isn't until you get to a certain stage of your life that you can maybe look back and see how these are all connected and have created this beautiful constellation. And for me, I just love that, because as someone who prides herself in her hard work and her hustle, like the good kind, showing up and doing the work, there are so many magical things that have happened in my life and in my career that I had nothing to do with. They were complete, either divine intervention or the universe or God, whatever you believe. There was stuff working in the background that I could have never dreamt up. And it's the combination of those two things that I think makes life so, I just sit in awe of it. And so for me, that really takes me to a place of gratitude where it's like, yep, I needed to show up well in that discussion, in that conversation. So there's, I had a role in that, but also the way in which that person came into my life, or the things that happened that meant I was sitting next to them instead of someone else, those things I had no control over. And so that combination of it.
Yeah. I always like to ask people, especially people who are very accomplished and talented, and well, everyone has talents, but I am always curious to know if there's something that you wish that you were better at.
Yes. I own too many shoes. No. Nah, you know what? I don't wish I'm better at that. That's my favorite.
no
Shoes are my, there's no problem. So I wish I was better at saying no to shoes. No, I don't. I want those in my life. I think what I wish I was better at is the posture in general, but posture between, again, when we were just talking about this, when do you know that you're supposed to be leaning in and trying to make things happen? And when should I be leaning back and let them come to me? I think I will always struggle with that. And, people say that, that God or the universe will keep sending you back those same lessons until you learn the lesson.
Okay.
I continually throughout my life that keeps coming back to me, because I'll always struggle with that, because I am someone who believes like, okay, I want to accomplish this. Here we go. And sometimes it's about showing up, and sometimes it's about letting it come. And when do you do which thing? And I do feel like that has been my journey pretty intensely these last couple of years now as an entrepreneur. And I really am proud of the progress that I've made on it, but I could always get better at it. As soon as I feel like I'm in a pretty zen place about it, I do that thing where I'm like kind of pop around the corner, like, okay, just checking in on the plan, God, how's it going? Like how, anything I can do to kind of, I'm here if you need me, instead of just kind of letting it, come to be. So I wish I was better at just instinctively, but I'm getting better at it. It's something I'm consciously and intentionally trying to concentrate on.
Okay. So, Small Business Revolution, season 6. I wanted to talk a little bit about that because it took a little bit of a shift, right?
It did, yeah.
What brought that on?
Yeah, so the first 5 seasons, as we discussed, all took place in different small towns. We'd help one community's main street and 6 key businesses every season. And it was a really fun kind of context for that, or kind of concept for each season. But during 2020, you can see where this is going, during season 5, we were in Fredonia, New York. We had the first few episodes of first few scenes of each of the episodes in the can. And then March of 2020 hit. And it was, not only did we have to figure out how to film a television show, from our basements, but in real life, we had to figure out how to help these small businesses stay afloat. Yeah. And it gave my team and I such, it felt purposeful that we were helping these specifically. But then it was also, the show turned out to be super creatively interesting, because we did things beyond our basements to still capture it and make it visually interesting. But it was such a case study in what small businesses went through during that time. And that was the first season that was nominated for the Emmy, because I think it was such an up close, raw, real, it was it is a reality show, an unscripted series. And so in real life, we were showing these changes and pivots that they had to make. And so that was really cool. But the other thing that happened during 2020 is that George Floyd was murdered on our soil here in Minneapolis and St. Paul. And I think as certainly every company and person within the Twin Cities, and then globally, I mean, that was a global awakening, was trying to figure out how to show up in that discussion, and how does our brand participate in discussions around racial justice? For us, we were like, we just really believed that we needed to stay in our lane. We didn't have any business talking about or trying to wade into police reform or access to healthcare, all the other things we need to address. But one of the ways forward around racial injustice is economic empowerment and being intentional about supporting Black-owned businesses and providing resources to entrepreneurs of color at the same level that we do other white colleagues. And so we said, we've been doing this program. This would be the perfect thing to redirect. And so we said, let's bring it home to Minneapolis and St. Paul, and let's feature all Black-owned businesses across the Twin Cities. And instead of featuring one main street, let's focus on 6 different neighborhoods that have perhaps been underestimated in the past. And that season was really grounded in a ton of community listening. We had to be so careful that it didn't feel like a white savior movement, that it truly honored the Black community, that it not feel like we were saving these businesses, but walking alongside them and just providing the resources. But that was the track record of the program. And so it was a very authentic way for us to show up. But then personally, it was just so interesting for all of us to go through that journey of understanding and doing the work. It was a real blessing. And so, again, it just became so clear that was kind of the final season. What a social impact was at an all-time high, and the bringing it home, and it just felt like this is the perfect bow to tie on the series.
How are those businesses doing now?
They're doing great. And it's really, I think that season was also nominated for an Emmy, but I think the accolade that I was the most proud of is that the community leaders, and there were a couple dozen that helped us shape that work, the fact that afterwards they just felt like we really got it right, the tonality, and it truly was something that was actually helpful and sustaining, after the outrage subsided. And to us, that was the most meaningful measure of our work, of all 6 seasons. I feel like that was those community leaders saying, yes, you got it, was the measure of success that we held ourselves to.
So I'm always curious about this with reality TV. And you mentioned it earlier, it is an unscripted show. Is it really unscripted? 100%?
Yeah, I mean, we structurally know what we want out of each scene. So when you're taking a small business, it was essentially a small business makeover show. So first, we would share the story of the small business. That truly is unscripted. We just follow them around. We just bring to life their story and hear directly from them. So the viewer falls in love with the business at the beginning of each episode. And then we come in and helped the businesses with 4 specific things. We would help them with their marketing. We would help them with their finances. We would bring in an operational expert, so another entrepreneur in the same industry who had success, because the operational idiosyncrasies of running a production company are different than a hair salon or different than a restaurant. So someone else from their industry to help them with operational expertise. And then we would, of course, help with a physical transformation. So structurally, we knew when we were having our first sit down, we wanted to hear about the pain points on each of those. So there was a bit of a script to what we were trying to draw out. But what they would say in response, we didn't know. So that's the part that's unscripted. And then as we're going through the process, we knew now was the time we're going to show them the new logo or what the website could do and get their feedback. So we knew kind of what are the kind of tent poles that we're aiming towards so that we can truly get to a makeover in time. But what we all say on camera is that's the part that's anyone's guess.
I love it.
So it's fun.
Yeah. And so the business owners, they need to be comfortable doing that, right?
Yeah. And I think that was a huge part. It's something that I took very seriously as the host of the show. I was also the host of the show. So I was in most scenes. And so I think I just felt like it was my responsibility to just make them feel comfortable. I mean, the secret to being good at television, and specifically unscripted, is to just start to forget that the cameras are there
Yes.
and to just be yourself. We're all highly entertaining, watchable people who say interesting things, but it's forgetting that there's a camera watching you do it. That's the real trick.
Right.
And so I felt like it was my job to just hold them in my energy and in my presence and in everything, to just help them just be themselves. And that was my favorite compliment I'd ever get from a small business, that they felt comfortable with the whole crew too. I mean, everyone who was on the set was creating that environment where it didn't feel intimidating. It felt, we were there to help first and foremost. That truly was the mission. And so I think people could feel that. You could feel intention, I think, and energy.
Yeah. So you are you're on the speaking circuit as well. So companies, corporations hire you as keynote. Tell us about your purpose pursuit. Is that the name of your new talk?
Yeah. Well, I still am getting a lot of calls for the, doing well by doing good, and I love that, and still give that talk quite a bit. But I was getting a lot of feedback from different companies where they said, or requests really, do you have anything that's kind of motivational? Like our employees are just, I mean, I think that doing well by doing good is motivational, but like for the individual employee, because our employees are just starting to hit this wall, and you're hearing a lot about quiet quitting and people just feeling kind of meh. And I personally, as we've been discussing, have been on the hot pursuit of like, how do we find our purpose, and have been doing a lot of work. I've read all the books, I've listened to all the podcasts, I've gone on the mindfulness retreat to Arizona, I've done all the things to try and figure out how does a person really zone in on their purpose. And so I brought that together with kind of the sensibility of I understand what it's like to work in a corporate environment and what those realities are and why it can start to feel heavy. And I've brought them together to try and really help each individual audience member, everyone from the C-suite to the front, everyone in the room feel like they have agency over pursuing what their purpose is. And the spoiler alert is that we have just made purpose too big. We have made it this like almost unachievable goal. Like we talk about it all the time. Like, what is my purpose? We tell our children, go pursue your purpose. We've made it this really, really big thing that is so macro, and purpose is actually quite micro. It is the things we've been talking about. It's how you use your superpowers, how you show up, how you see the world, your perspective. It is all these, how we treat other people, the tone we use in email. These things, we are our purpose. And we have started to confuse vocation with calling, and who you work for, what you do on a day-to-day, like your job, that is important. But who you are and recognizing and celebrating that is, you have to be, you have to pursue that first, and then the other kind of complements it. So anyway, I'm really excited about this new talk because I kind of summarize a lot of the things I've been reading and researching. So it comes from a lot of depth of expertise, my own perspective as well. But it's kind of organized as kind of one big conclusion, a couple of ahas, and then 5 pretty actionable things people can do to kind of pursue identifying their purpose.
So relevant right now.
Thank you.
So incredibly relevant. There's so much so many generational things in there, right? As we look a few generations before us, they were all about, you worked for one company for your entire career, and it was work. And so there's a lot of work to do on this topic. This philosophy will help a lot of people, but it's, I think, partially just a matter of the way the new generations are coming up and looking at how they work and how they live their life.
100%. And I feel like those of us who are, I suppose, what you would call middle age, there's a reason there's a term middle age crisis. Like you put that alongside the fact that I think people are having a bit of this, like, I almost call it like pandemic whiplash, where we saw a window of how our lives could look different. And I think we all promised ourselves that we were going to change some stuff. We were going to be more judicious about what we let back on our calendar. We were going to spend our time differently. We were going to honor ourselves and our priorities first. And then life just kind of, and work just kind of like creeped back in. And all of a sudden we're all looking at our calendars again and we're like, shit, it happened. I didn't I didn't use that window that I had. And so people are kind of in the space of like almost remorse because now our eyes have been opened to how it could be different and we feel like we missed a window, but you didn't miss a window. The headline is you didn't miss a window, and you don't have to quit your job. You don't have to leave your company and, build a yurt somewhere. Like you can still exist in the general structure of your life. It is literally, and I talk about this in the talk, is how we decide and choose to see things. That's the real change.
Yeah.
So.
Wow. I could talk with you for hours.
Me too.
Thank you so much for spending some time with us today.
Thank you for asking me.
Being here in studio. We are excited to see more of what you do. I've followed your career for some time, so it's a pleasure to meet you in person.
Thank you for having me.
Wonderful. With that, well, one last question for you. If people want to reach you, if people want to connect with you, how should they go about that?
Yeah, there's a couple ways. My website, I have a contact form on there. It's Amanda K, the K is important, Brinkman.com. And then I have the same handle in social media at Amanda K. Brinkman. I'm most active on Instagram and on LinkedIn. And then LinkedIn's just Amanda Brinkman. So yeah,
Wonderful.
I would love to hear from people.
Yes, great. All right. Well, as always, you can reach me on LinkedIn as well. My email address will be here on screen. Also, make sure that you have followed Heroic Productions here on LinkedIn for more events, news, and stories. From all of us at Heroic, thank you for tuning in. We wish you a wonderful holiday season, a happy new year, because we won't see you until January. Cannot believe that. All right, everyone, have a wonderful week. We'll see you soon.